Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I apologize for my tardiness. My wife has been sick this week, so I had some extra stuff to do around the house to get going. But tonight, I'm very excited. So, yesterday, I think, today's November 13th, where I'm sitting at like 9 p.m., 9:15. Uh, and I believe Tuesday, GitKraken dropped a new release, the 10.5 release. Now, for those people who are unaware, there is a website, feedback.gitkraken.com, where people can go request features, upvote existing features, and slowly things kind of move up through the rankings. Git worktree support, I think, has been number one in the feedback list for like 2 years. It's been a little while, but with 10.5.0, it is finally here. So we're going to dive in and take a look at that. And then learn a little bit about getting work trees, and then probably catch some stuff up. Other things worth noting: .NET Conf is this week. There is, if people didn't catch last week's stream, or even my linked .NET user group talk covering kind of what's new in C# and .NET, check out the beginning of last week's stream, and also check out the linked Spokane.NET user group where I go over the related stuff. You can find it on Intelitech's YouTube channel. With that said, not overly exciting, but what is important is .NET 9 is now fully released. So for people who like to be on bleeding edge and grab the latest and greatest, it is out there. It is worth noting the way the .NET team does their versioning. The odd number releases are what they call their standard term support, I think is the right term, and their even numbered ones are their long term support. There's no difference in quality between these two. The only difference is how long Microsoft is committed to support them. So for people with like support level agreements with Microsoft, this matters, right? This is how long they can go back to Microsoft to say, hey, by the way, there's an issue. We'd like you to fix it, that kind of thing. For the rest of us, it just means a new version of .NET that we get to go powwow with. It's going to be great. Awesome. So, a couple things. First of all, and I'm going to put myself on this side. GitCon is coming up. GitCon.com, December. What is it? December 10th. See, I can remember dates. There is quite a cool lineup of speakers. Check it out. It should be awesome. I am very much looking forward to it. They also have cool prizes as well. So that's kind of exciting. So, yeah. Okay. Next up. This is the exciting. This is the exciting stuff. And actually we should grab this. So, this is the latest and greatest release note. So, for reference, feedback.gitkraken.com, right? All right, so this is where things have been opened, done, etc. And you can see everything that's floated up to the top. And you can, if we look at done, work trees, 506 votes, quite a few, considering the one that was here before this release was only at 408. So that's not bad. So if you're interested in adding things, go upvote this. They are very good about updating the status of these things. So under consideration, it usually means, hey, we're looking into what it would take to implement this. Not fully committing, because some things are a lot harder than others, but we're at least looking into what a solution might be, which is kind of cool. So especially seeing these two things kind of bubble all the way up to the top is pretty awesome. Okay, so worktree support we will go through here. The other cool thing in this is Launchpad views, being able to actually save customized views. So I've shown off the Launchpad before. I love it for looking at all my issues, but being able to kind of save some queries, especially around like, hey, there's this particular set of people that I'm interested in following because, maybe my team just dumps all developers into one big team. It's like, well, that may be the team in terms of like the Git provider's view of the world, but functionally the people I deal with on a day-to-day basis is, these four people, right? So you might have something of that nature. And then all of these ones down here. And then one that may not be obvious, many people, but excites me very, very much. This one right here. I do a lot of .NET stuff, a lot of Microsoft tech. I work in DevOps and GitHub primarily as my Git providers. And this one annoyed me to no end. The number of people I had to help when their token expired and it would prompt them for your username and password was really annoying. So this one makes me happy. I realize I get excited about the little things. Okay, so Git work trees. For those people unfamiliar with it, a work tree, and there's the Git docs. This is something that GitKraken has kind of supported for a while. It at least didn't crash or do anything wacky when you created work trees. But to leverage work trees, you often had to drop into the terminal to be able to actually do anything useful. The big idea here is imagine the cases where I've seen people who they clone their repository twice simply because they want to have two directories, usually pointed at two different spots, so that they can like compare and contrast. Like I've seen oftentimes people will keep a clone of their repository just sitting on main because it's like, well, I want to test my latest stuff. Like I want to know, has the stuff I've been working on, is that different than what's like been released or something similar to that? And that's at least a fairly common thing that I've seen people do. But the problem is if you clone the repository twice, you've effectively doubled the size of your repo on disk, all just so that you can have the same stuff in two different folders. What a work tree does is it allows you to have two separate directories of your repository checked out. And because they're two separate directories, you can open them up in your IDE. You can treat them like you would any other repository, but you don't have two separate .git directories. So you don't take the same hit as far as having the entire Git database in multiple places. You only have that once, but now you can have all of these work trees being able to spread apart. They're also really powerful for doing things like code reviews on pull requests, because now rather than messing up your current branch or your working directory where you're currently at, you can go ahead and just open up a pull request, point that branch into a work tree, and now you've got a directory where you can play with things. You can compare and contrast back to maybe main or the branch that you're working on. It's much easier to kind of go back and forth with this. This is the support that we've been given. This is the awesomeness. When you first fire up GitKraken after launching this, and I very intentionally had to do a little work to get myself into this state, you will be greeted by this lovely little thing here, right? Once you click the got it button, it's a gone. This will link you out to a nice YouTube video that Jonathan from GitKraken did, kind of explaining work trees and walking through it. So if you are interested, it's also out on their YouTube channel. So nice and easy option. The key thing to know about this, I'm going to put myself back on the other side for this part. So you'll note here, for people who are new, or I should say existing GitKraken users, and updated in, I don't know if this is like this for a clean install, but none of mine actually had, despite the nice big banner about workspaces, they didn't default to having them on. And the important thing to know about this sidebar is each of these collapsible panes, you can show and hide. The only thing they don't let you hide is the local, because you kind of need to be able to see your local stuff. Otherwise, what are you doing? Mountain Dew. I have not had enough of you today. Okay. But you can see here, I've got things like GitHub issues, teams, submodules, GitHub actions, and you can customize this per repository just however you like, depending on what is actually interesting to you. But if we go and open up work trees, and let me flip over to the material design, right? You can see I've got one work tree here that it apparently is created just from the fact that that this is the branch that I started on, right? And I can flip back to master, and this is where my work tree is currently sitting, and it's tracking this current branch. Now I've got a couple ways that I can go through and handle things. You can create a new work tree with this little plus button right here, right? So the plus button only shows up once you hover around this title. And you get this. The other option that you can do is you can come over to these branches, right? And where is create work tree from branch. So especially for pull request ones, and I believe, let me check. Do it from the pull request screen too. Check. Let's see. All pull requests. Is not disappointing. I'm gonna have to add that to the list of requests. This is both the best and worst thing, right? Is GitKraken is great at implementing stuff, but every time they implement stuff, I then want more. I want it down. I want the same option down here, right? Because I can do this, but it'd be really slick if I could right click and immediately jump to a work tree rather than having to go from the right. So I mean, in theory, if we could just jump to the branch, go to the branch in graph, right? So I can go to the branch in the graph, right click, and then I can create work tree from it. So that is an option, right? That gives us a little bit easier access to it. So something of that nature going through there. So let's take a look. So if we come here, Flipper commented out. So let's imagine we wanted to go here, and I don't even know if there's a PR for this. Is there a PR for this? Can't tell. The scroll view normally be near the top if it's got a new one. Look like there's even a PR for this. On one where there's an actual PR for this. Scroll view, ignore pad and templates. So go to this in graph. There's that. And if we right click on this guy, we can create work tree. Right. So you can see down here, I have my working directory where my repository is checked out is right here. Right. So it's tacking on dot work trees on the end here. Right. So we get the dot work trees. And then it's just defaulting to the branch name and then work tree branch to create. Right. So we've got our source, branch to create, and then a local directory, because you can't have your work tree checked out in the same repository where your code is. Again, the idea is you've got two directories, each with a copy of the code, but typically pointed at two different places. Right, so we go through here and we can go, okay, sounds great. Make me a work tree. Open now. Open. Okay, and then I'm going to point out one more thing that's rather important. This little guy right here, we are in a work tree. That is somewhat important to note. And the other thing is, if I go File, Open in File Manager, then we come over here, right? We can see that this guy, ooh, that's interesting. I expected it to open me different spot, right? We can see where this guy should have opened me is in the wrong place. Which I'm gonna have a slew of bug reports. It's gonna be great. Don't worry, GitKraken's good at fixing stuff. The place it was supposed to be. So this is the main repository here, right? If we go back here and I go work trees, and here is where we should have been, right? This guy here is now checked out. And again, you'll note the key thing that's missing from this, the .git directory, right? I'm checked out. I've got the full code. I've got the solution. We can fire this guy up and look at it. You can see there's this .git file, right? And that's, I believe, open with. Pop this sucker open just once, right? You can see this little thing. There's the link back, right? So it's saying, okay, here's where the main repository is checked out. The .git folder is where the Git database stuff lives, and then there's the work tree and all the information. So any Git operations, it now has the link back to the main repository. Other thing I'll plug, I keep using that phrase, learn.kraken.com. Oh, hey, that's all caps. That's fine. All caps. For people who are interested in learning more about Git, I cannot recommend this course enough. It is absolutely wonderful. It is free. And I think this tagline down here, it's often not covered in university curriculum, nor even in new job onboarding. I can assure you in the classes we teach at university, we make sure this is covered because it is absolutely critical that people understand source control. Do not understand why it's not first thing that's taught. So this, if you're struggling with some of the Git concepts, highly recommend checking out learn.gitkraken.com. Okay. So, but we've got this work tree here. Now we can fire this sucker up, and proof is in the pudding. This thing will work. The thing to note, if you have a repository with like a long build time or like multiple steps for building, this can be kind of obnoxious, right? Because when you make a work tree, this is like fresh clone at this point. Because normally when you switch branches, things that aren't under source control are still there, right? Like you're in .NET, we've got our bin and obj directors, which are common offenders that hang around because they aren't in source control. We intentionally exclude them with our git ignore. I click the button. No, resist temptation to update. This temptation to update during the stream. You update 15 minutes before the stream, not during. But we can take this guy and then we can actually, we flip this actually over to the demo. Sometimes I forget, I think people forget that there's this drop down for picking your startup project. I see a lot of people come over and right click on the project in Solution Explorer, which is what I often do as well. Mostly because I forget that this thing exists. Despite the fact, it's big and right in my face and right next to the go button, right? And we're launched and off and running. And if we want to, well, while we're here, let's just review this PR. When did I check out exactly? Scroll viewer, ignore padding, and put template. All right, it's this one. View code. So let's see. So this is a new attached property, and I think I remember seeing some discussion on an issue around this where there was a new scroll viewer change and the padding was just being propagated out. Jump out to GitHub. I think there's a link back. If not, feel free to close the PR and request changes and let me know. Okay, cool. Yeah. So the only thing that I think might be a little off, this is actually forwarding the property in versus the other one that's not. So we may come back and double check this because this is just hard coding it to true, and I think the intent is to actually forward it down. Well, let's continue here, right? Like we can, now that we've got this, let's pick on list box, right? So let's go here, and if we do click on list box, and then let's see about requesting. So if we come over here and we come down here, list box, we'll show off cloud patches all the time. It'll be wonderful, right? And so let's see, where was the change? So let's see, themes list box. It's around 366, and there's another one at 49. So 360. Let's come here. 6. Boom. All right. So I think the actual intent here, and I'm not. Let's go check the list boxes. Wow, I gotta turn off caps lock. Trying to decide. This is being passed down, but attached properties don't do anything without extra stuff. Let's see. Scroll viewer, ignore padding. Let's see. Does this guy do anything? Doesn't register. Oh, we need to make him match the others. I actually do. Look. Somebody's got to be reading this property. There's a lot of assignments. Scroll viewer. So it's used here. So if scroll viewer ignore padding is false and padding mode is default, then we do setting of the margin to forward in the padding. It looks okay. Merry Christmas. What happened to Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday? Don't know. Sorry, I feel like I'm missing context. Hang on, let me drink Mountain Dew and reread that. Did I say I was going to stream Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? If I did, that was a very big mistake on my part. Okay, so this guy really just forwards down padding when padding mode added. What are the values here? Default and content. I'm confused when each of these get applied. So false and default, false and content. So you have to set it to false, but it defaults to true. So I'm not actually sure that this changes anything. Oh, it's Thursday for me already. Only seems like yesterday you were streaming. I'm sorry. It's a good thing you were late because I was late today too, Izzy. So it works. It all works out. It all works out. This is actually not going to do anything. And the reason I say it's not going to do anything because this thing, the default value for ignore padding is true. So in the new property metadata here, right? So that guy there, if the default value is true, that is the same as not being applied. So that's not actually going to make much of a difference. The key thing here, though, let me look back at the original issue. Tree view. Yeah, so somebody was trying to manipulate the scroll viewer that's inside of the tree view with these attached properties. And none of them propagate through. So I think the key change here that really needs to happen, right? So it's not just direct assign to true here that we're looking for. What we're looking for is binding relative source, big head on the other side. Let's see. Templated parent. Right? And then the binding path here is going to be, let's see, WPF : scroll viewer, ignore padding. So I think, though, we don't want to just forward down one. I think we want to forward down two. System runtime. Oh, that's because we were debugging. Okay, and I think what we want here also is, wasn't there a content mode? Padding mode. Right. Padding mode also should probably be propagated down. Because I think what we would like to do is actually send this from top down. Now, I'm curious, though. Padding mode defaults to content, but ignore padding is true. So unless you set ignore padding to false, it's not going to do anything. We're going to just do this. We're going to do this, do this, do this, do this. I think this is the actual change that we want. And see here. No. Game bar, no. How do I make you stop? I want you to not exist. How do I make you go away? Capture, go away. Audio, go away. Go away. I just do that. Okay. Okay. Do not press Windows key G. The problem is I use Windows key copy paste for the multi-clipboard, and that occasionally bites me. Okay, so there was that line. We're not going to fix the whole thing. We'll just do the 648. G648. There's the other scroll viewer, and once again, we just want to forward those properties through. So for those people who haven't seen it, this is effectively what ends up happening. The other way that this can be made to quote unquote work. So just to clarify, the fundamental issue here is if somebody sets one of these attached properties up on the list box itself, those properties just get assigned to the list box. They don't propagate down. The way that they typically would propagate down is by adding appropriate bindings and saying, oh, okay, if it's set on the list box, which is the templated parent right here, whatever the padding mode and ignore padding are on our list box, go ahead and assign them into this particular scroll viewer, right? That forwards them down. The other way this can technically be achieved is you can set the property up itself to recurse all the way down. The disadvantage there is it's less efficient if you have to say, hey, this attached property propagates all the way down. Let's see. FYI, I fixed the snack bar styling thing I had. Turns out old me is stupid. I was using my custom message type to bind the message of snack bar. Turns out bindings can't do casting like that. Yup. That is correct. That is correct. But all good, Izzy. All good. I do wacky stuff all the time. Oh, and I've got a C# problem too that we may look at while we're going. I had a colleague show me some interesting C# code with generics, asking me how and why it worked the way that it did. And I looked down at it and I went, I have no idea. And it's unusual for me to do that. And so I was like, send me a copy of that. I want to dig into that deeper because I don't understand it yet. Because I have a C# compiler that lives in my head, and it always bothers me when the compiler in my head doesn't match the compiler on the computer. So there's that. Okay, so we're gonna, I think, suggest some changes. Just 2 changes. So we've got this here. So this is the code suggestion here, and let's just double check our changes. Okay. That just expression bodies up all the members and then shows the list box. Here. Let's see. I think. Ooh, is that something you can show on stream? I can't show the original code, but I can. Oh, Outlook. Off of that screen. I can't show the original code, but I think we. I had him send me a copy of it, and we can recreate it. Because my intent was to I don't have the original code anyway because it was on a client's repository that I don't have access to. But I had him send me enough of a description of what the setup looks like that I think we can recreate it. If you got really good examples, I add them to my calamities list. I don't know if I showed this recently. So I started in on my calamities thing again. And I need to add some stuff to it. So I've got ideas sitting in here for more fun things to add into this calamities repository. So people have other suggestions of more horrible things you can do with C#. Yeah. There's some funky stuff which gets really entertaining. So I have bad ideas. The one that I want to add to it is the new attribute for declaring overload resolution. So if you missed that, Spokane.net user group talk. Let's see. I think what we want to do instead is to forward the value attached property rather than always set it to true, which is the default. Here is a sample showing updating it on the list box. Stage these changes, and then we're going to suggest file changes. And I think, if I remember right, that puts a comment out on Yeah, it does this. Yeah, we could approve and run, but there's that. So, okay, anyway, work trees. Yeah. Feels like going through trading cards. Yep, I can understand that. So, but you probably missed this one, Izzy. Work trees in GitKraken now exist. They are a thing. And they do show up. And I've found two teeny weensy little bugs here that already bothered me, but that's a different story. But the key thing here is I've got two separate work trees that I'm now working with. The other thing I wanted to look at is there was a pretty cool article a colleague of mine shared. It's this one here. And so this one, I'm not familiar with this author, Matt, I assume. And the description here was how they prefer to use work trees. Right? So the work tree flow that I just showed with the PR review of, hey, look, we can now open the PR in a separate folder. We don't have to mess up our own stuff or clutter things. And then we can just throw them away. That's kind of cool, right? That makes me happy. This one here is a slightly different approach of how to go through and do it. And specifically, in this blog, they outline a few different ways that they go through and use work trees. So rather than breaking up by like branch, it's per concurrent activity. So they've identified the 5 things that they might be doing concurrently on any given repo. And then they promptly go through and make separate work trees for each. So specifically calling out, right? So main is for looking at the pristine code, effectively, what's been released, what's out there for, sanity check yourself. Work for whatever they're currently working on. Great, fine. Review for doing code reviews. Fuzz, which is an interesting one, effectively running, it sounded like fuzz testing, where you use some sort of fuzzing tool to try to introduce differences in your code to try to catch bugs. And then Scratch for everything else of, I just need a temp directory to go through and play with. And this isn't bad. I don't think I would go through and do this, making 5 workspaces for every single repo I work in. I work in way too many repos. I think for a mono repo setup, this probably works great. I think for a poly repo setup, this is probably way overkill. Massive overkill. But that's another nice thing about having work trees is it does give you a way of kind of having checked out stuff exist. Like if you've got a back end thing that you need to have up and running for like local work, but then oh well, I need to go check this branch out. Well, you don't have to kill your back end running. You can do a work tree to jump over to it. So this was interesting, and this was a pattern that one of my colleagues was trying to set up and ran into issues doing so. And so I wanted to see if we could actually set it up as well. If I go back to my master work tree, and then, what is lock work tree? Lock message. No touchy. That seems appropriate. Submit. Oh. Remove this work tree, unlock this work tree. If it's locked, can I remove it? Oh. Wait, is lock? What's that? I've never even used lock on the command line. Oh, okay. Prevents it from being pruned automatically. Interesting. It also prevents it from being moved or deleted. Okay, that's useful. I don't know that I would care that much, but okay, great. Cool, they exposed it. Yeah, force remove. We're gonna switch it. Oh, hang on. I'll move myself out of the way. Failed to delete. Invalid argument. Hold on. I have a sinking suspicion. Oftentimes when GitKraken has errors like this, it's usually an artifact of file locks, and I'm going to go with Visual Studio had that file lock. Now, the interesting part, though, is did it clean up after itself, or did it leave it sitting there? Oh, it left it sitting there. So it torched the work tree. Okay. I'm going to have to go back through this. More bugs. More bugs. More bugs. Okay. So let's see if we can set up. I kind of want to see if I can set up this blogs setup only in work trees for what we're doing. Kraken question. Fire away, Izzy. I've got lots of Kraken thoughts. Okay, so if I wanted to go through and do this, reference to checkout. So we're going to go through and do this. Branch to create. Cannot create a work tree because work tree with the same branch name already exists. So I wanna check and see where this got to. Let's see. Have you ever seen issues when pushing tags that it fails to do something in the hooks? Oh, interesting. Okay, so you've got local Git. So I just to clarify, are these just standard Git hooks? I've deleted them, but they keep being recreated. Oh, so I don't think so. But if you have Git hooks that aren't returning something to do with LFS, apparently, I could is LFS stores data in a separate location so that it's not the regular deltas. Files under Git hooks. Yes. So you've got a script under one of your Git hooks, and I'm guessing it must return a non-zero status code. Pre and post ones. Okay, so like a pre-push and post or similar. They keep being recreated. The tags really shouldn't be getting recreated. The one thing that is worth noting here is the tags inside of GitKraken, unlike branches that nicely show up. I've never added anything. Okay. Tags show up as both local and remote under the same thing, and it's kind of annoying, right? So like I've got this 510 tag, and visually there's no way for me to tell that there's actually two tags here, right? So I've got the remote tag, um, and I've got the local tag. Books just keep appearing after doing a pull. So I'm wondering, are you doing a delete on both? Because I have seen issues around like deletes when people do they delete the local tag and not necessarily the remote one, because then a pull or a fetch definitely retrieves that information all the way back down. Because I'd be willing to bet if they're magically reappearing either on a pull, or if you've got the auto fetch interval roughly around a minute, it mostly happens on push. Okay. So I think most of the time the pushes in Kraken end up doing a fetch. I've got an interesting thing on one of my repositories with my GitHub authentication where it makes me re-authenticate every time until I set the appropriate user, because I have multiple. Which unfortunately means all of the operations in GitKraken that use the CLI, I can tell because it pops my authentication window every time. It's somewhat annoying. But wow. Right. Double check, make sure we actually got that one out. But if you right click on it and delete the one from your remote first and then delete the one locally, do they still show back up? I'd be surprised if, I mean, it's possible if you've got a hook that is returning a non-zero exit code. I have seen issues with Kraken, like on that last one, right, where there was an error when deleting the work tree, but it still removed the work tree here, right? So I think it's updating the main Git database, the repo first, and deleting the file second, which means that the file delete fails, it's already removed. So I have seen UI things like that where timing of when something fails because of order of operations, it's not like it's one big transaction. So you've gotten halfway through the process. I'd be curious on that. But yeah, let me know if you're able to test it. Right click on a tag if you're trying to delete from the remote first, in my case origin, and then delete locally, and then do a push or a fetch or a pull and see what happens. Because you can do the underneath your pull, you can hit fetch all, and that usually should retrieve everything. But I am curious if you delete the remote tag first and then the local. And again, because GitKraken doesn't show a difference in, sorry, this thing is, because GitKraken doesn't show a difference in the display of remote versus local tags, they're all just tag. I get, but it okay. So I think the issue that I see here immediately is if I try to create a work tree from this commit, work tree branch to create main. So I can do there, right? And cancel. Oh, there's another interesting thing. If I cancel, I still want it to do this, but I can come here. I've now got, I assume, a main and a master. Okay. If I go through and do another one, right? Create work tree from this commit. Let's see. Work. Right? Create work tree. Cancel. Close the dialog even when I cancel you. Then I can keep going. But what I'm interested in now is I've got main, I've got work. I'm willing to bet my colleague's problem was trying to do this with branches. What is a work tree? Missing out on the coolness. It is not quite a branch. So think of it closer as a replacement for if you've ever cloned your repository multiple times, simply because you wanted to have two local copies. So the work tree in this case, so material design toolkit, this is my main repository. And the key thing to note here, I've got this little .git folder, right? And if I back out and go here, you'll note if I jump into here, I have no .git folder, right? Instead, I've got a little .git file, which points back to where it was. But now I've got something, and actually this is probably worth showing off, right? So if I look at the properties of this folder is 23.7 megs. Right? If I go back to my main folder, properties, it's a little bit bigger, like a lot bigger. So the advantage of a work tree is you get to share the same Git database, so your .git directory, but you can effectively have multiple clones, or clones are the wrong words, multiple directories all sharing that same Git database. So rather than having to clone multiple times, you can have these work trees to be able to go through and leverage. So it gives you a nice, easy way. So common use cases are oftentimes like PR review, or some people even like using them for similar to branches, but separate streams of work.
So rather than switching back and forth between two different branches, especially when there's like, you push up the branch, you open the pull request, you go on to the next task. Well, then you get PR feedback. It's like, well, okay, shoot, I got to pause, go over and address this. If you have two separate work trees, just switch directories, right? You just go back to that other directory where you were off and running, and you're good to go. Yeah. Looks like I'm not finishing work till midnight tonight. Sorry. Should I mention the .NET 9 released? Time to update all the things? Joke. But it gives you a nice, easy way of going through and doing that. Now, I have, just even on this stream, I found a handful of things that kind of don't quite work perfectly the way I want, but it does get me pretty close to the way there. Because now I can switch into my main work tree. I can always go back to the master one if I want, right? And you can kind of see, I do like this. They've got the little house logo for the real one. Done. That is so yesterday. Izzy, I was talking to a colleague earlier. I told him, I was like, aren't you proud of me? I waited 24 hours before I revved the project to .NET 9. I waited a whole 24 hours, and then I promptly revved it to .NET 9. Yeah, demanded LTS. Yeah, I get it. Some places insist on LTS coding. Though even places that insist on LTS, are you able to still use the newer .NET 9 compiler as long as you leave your TFM pointed at net 8? Oftentimes places that require LTS only care about the TFM, not necessarily the tooling. So sometimes there's a nice gray area. Ah, okay. But I like the little icon. It's a pretty little tree. Pretty little tree. Okay, cool. So, yes. Anyway, GitKraken 10.5.0 work trees are now a thing, and they are amazing and wonderful and happy and makes me very, 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 very excited. Yeah. The saved launchpads views I'm definitely going to use, but these are less interesting to show because they're really, I just want to save my queries around like people and projects. That's about it. So, okay, cool. Okay, so hardwired and inspected VS version, no permissions to do anything useful. Ah, that level of lockdown. Got it. Terrifying level. I am curious though, if I go here, right? So here's the other bug that bothers me. If I open in File Manager, it doesn't go to the right place. It opens it up in the .git directory, which is not what you want. You want it to open up this directory. Little things. I am curious though, if we go through and make a change here real quick. Because I checked out from a commit, I should be on a detached head. So I imagine I'm going to get bit with the idea of, well, you're not on a branch. So that may end up being an interesting problem, but I'm willing to bet once I check out from commit, because I've got a local, well, even though I did it from commit, it just made the branch pointed at that commit. That might be okay. Might be okay. Yeah, I think my colleague's issue was probably around the subtle difference between which one's the house and which one's the tree. Because this should just behave. Solution Explorer. Right, so if I go something like that, it doesn't matter. White space change is good. Right, so if I go here, stage all changes. Just testing work. It changes, right? Like, I am working on a branch. I am in a completely separate directory. I can do all the needful, right? Uh, my master's at the wrong place, so that's annoying. Let's see. I need to remove some remotes. I've got too many remotes. Hide myself. Hide core. Don't want that one there. There we go. Because what I really want to do is land on this one. Yeah, so push main and start pull request to origin mount. So sweet. So yeah, same flow as what you would expect. And then we can just go back to our main work tree, and then we can say, by the way, I'm all done with this. And we're gonna close Visual Studio down, not get hosed. Sometimes it's fun though, doing the Google waddle, basically a 10-minute walk to do a Google for something and try to eyeball it back to the dev room. I forgot you work in a highly locked down environment, Izzy. Sorry. I do like the term Google waddle. It's kind of like SneakerNet, only you have to do it from memory. This work tree. I think I'm gonna love. I think I'm gonna love them. You minor UX things, but I overall the other thing that I'm not sure I like is it doesn't remove. It doesn't look like it removes the local branch when you remove the work tree. Not sure how I feel about that. I feel like I wanted to clean up the local branch that goes with it, because otherwise create workspace, delete workspace. Like I expect delete to invert create. And instead now I have to do extra cleanup. I mean, it's not a big deal to me because functionally we get into this situation where check out origin master. Local. Because at the end of the day, we just kind of get into these situations where I oftentimes just declare bankruptcy and nuke all of the local branches and like, I don't want to look at you anymore. Go away. And then it goes away and fixes it. Okay. Let's take a quick gander at take a quick gander at a couple of these pull requests, and then I was hoping to do a little stuff with Velopack and Wix installers. Okay. So slider tooltip not showing. This is the one we looked at before. Oh, this is the one from last time that I think was a password box. So we're just gonna kick this because I assume it is very unlikely that this test is, well, maybe we should look at this test real quick and see why did it fail. Oh, that's not the test. Hang on. Values differ. Expected times New Roman. Context menus follows text box font family. This didn't change anything around that code, though. Shouldn't have changed anything around that code. So let's try this guy out. Let's see here. See, we're gonna go to here. Slider, tooltip. Oh, we should have done it as a workspace. Can we now that we're here? Or I'm sorry, not workspace, work tree. Wow. Let's see. Yeah, I kind of wish if I do this, I do this. Will it? Yeah, it won't let me. Dang it. I got to go back here. Kind of annoying. I kind of wish it would let me redo my way into this. So what I would like to do is create work tree from, and then create work tree. Open now. Then it would be much nicer if it remembered the right directory to open so I didn't have to do this manually.
And let's go just take a quick gander at this. Since I'm the one who pushed last, kind of feel a mild urge to double check this test. I also don't like that some of these tests are fragile because it's fairly obnoxious having things that just blindly fail. So I'm going to bet that if I rerun this test locally, probably pass. Because it was this one here, and it's possible that this is runner dependent as well, because this is reaching into the font families. Right, so that passes. Let's see, text box font, font family, family names. I kind of feel like this, like I don't think this is gonna change it. I feel like this should be an assert contains rather than and I think assert contains is collection then value. Remember right? Nope. The opposite. The problem here, nullability. Values. Oh, because of this, it's nullable. Okay. Interesting that that failed like that. I just want to look at the logs here. Get element content. Get property font family. So it called get property twice. Interesting. Why did it call get property twice? Because there's the get element. Oh, get property context menu on the element, perhaps? No. Get element context menu. Get property font family. Does it pull the font family from both? There's the second one. Let's see. So this guy here. Oh, did it actually fail? Which line did this fail on? What's the assert line? 323. So it actually failed on this one, not this one. How does this pass? And I'm only saying that because font family here should be, I don't understand. Does font family have a quality? Oh, it overrides equals. That's how it works. Okay. So when you do an assert equals, it's going to check the default equality of the two types, which oftentimes for reference types is going to be calling the equals method. And in this case, font family apparently overrides equals, which we'd have to go look at its implementation, but I'm going to guess that it's a sane implementation. Given that this test passed on my machine. So this one here, so on the failure, it expected Times New Roman, got Serogi or whatever. Why would that have occurred? So I guess the question is, for context menu, how did we implement this? If I do get blame, whichever one added this description attribute is probably the commit that did it. Let's see here. 8 does this. Let's see. There's that. So this is just using a relative binding for the floating offset. Oh, this is not the same commit. There must have been an extra change in there. Hunt this and give me the PR number. Give me the PR number. So is this one? I mean, that's pretty explicit. I'm kind of wondering if this is executing too quickly and the binding doesn't always have time to evaluate properly. Because the text box has had time to render, but I'm wondering if the context menu hasn't. I'm wondering if we just delay it a little bit. Oh, rather than doing that, if we put this whole thing in, it'll wait. Wait for that. Go. Async that, sucker. This should override here, func task, blah, blah, blah. That way, it'll at least retry this a couple times. Let's see. Change this up. Side. Adding retry to flaky test. Good. Push. Doo-doo. There's a work tree. Easy mode. Now we can go back to the main one. And now if that thing fails again, I don't have to worry about switching branches nearly as much. All right, so world becomes a much, much simpler place. Let's see here. This guy goes here, and I think prove and run. I kind of wish if I was the one who pushed last, like if somebody with contributor rights pushes last and it was already approved before, you can probably consider. Like somebody with push access, I guess technically I push to a different fork, so I kind of get it, but it's like, eh. Okay, so let's see. Fixing code style issues. We can probably approve and run this one blindly because I've looked at it before. Okay, so what do we got here? So we got a dependable. Oh, it's interesting that the dependabot stuff didn't pick that up, but that's fine. Let's see. XAML test rev. I'm curious about this. This looks like something might. These doc changes. This looks like something needs to be rebased. I have a strange suspicion. Let's look. Let's look. Code style issues. Let's see. Add remote. Okay. Ah, that's the issue. So here's what's going on. Right. So there are quite a few changes in here. But it looks like this may have been a rebase or similar because I see a co-author in here on a lot of these. And it's the JLGU user on all of them. And these are all commits that have previously made it in. So, and I'm just watching this pink line right here, right? So if we grab code style here, right, and we're going to solo code style, solo master, all right? So if we follow these down, we can see that code style and master, this is where they deviated, but these are the two commits in questions that are probably interesting. It looks like what happened is these two commits were done. Hey, guy. Thank you for the raid. Hopefully you had a wonderful stream. Welcome, everyone. We are currently reviewing some PRs on the material design and XAML project using my favorite tool, GitKraken. I am heavily biased and love the tool very much. So in this case, I think it was commit, commit, and then we have a string of commits that got rebased on top. So I'm willing to bet what happened was the PR got out of date, and then the rebase was done in the wrong direction. Rather than rebasing the feature branch, in this case code style, on top of master, master was rebased on top of code style. I think that's probably what happened. Just making breakfast though. Dang. So you are very much in a different time zone than me. It is nearly 10:30 my time. Okay, so the question then comes, how do we fix this, right? Hang on. Shameless self-promotion time. GitKraken workshops. So, on the note of fixing stuff, I recently did a workshop. This is interesting. Save time with Git work trees. I mean, this is looking good, but I think they may have left my picture here. I don't know that I'm doing this talk. Huh. I wonder if I'm doing this talk. I should check. Anyway, the one I was going to show off was this one. How to undo Git mistakes. This guy here. So if anybody's interested, it's always nice when you go to show something off and you see your picture and go, huh. I'm now trying to think back because I've been asked to do a lot of talks recently. And for those people who are new, I moved a couple months ago. We had a house flood. My world was chaos. I was scrambling to remember how to do everything. So, doesn't say who's doing this one, but that's my picture. So that's exciting. Florida, further over. You're close. Right country. Washington State. So West Coast US. So yeah, but for fixing Git mistakes, this workshop down here, now live on YouTube, feel free to check it out. We're gonna leverage some of the stuff that I do in there. So functionally, what we would like to do is we would like to take this code style one. Now, this contributor's contributed before, and so I'm fairly confident I have push access back to their repository. So step one, we're gonna undo the mistake. All right, so we're gonna just go here. We're gonna reset hard and just back it all the way up, right? Because these are the two commits that actually look like they were intentional. And then what we'll do is we will just take this and I'm going to drag it on top of master. And I'm going to then rebase code style onto master. I think the rebase was probably done in the other direction. Okay. And then now we've got a handful of merge conflicts. So let's take a little peek, see at what these are. Okay. So let's see here. Floating hint. What do we got going on here? Because we probably want to take master on just about everything. Yeah, because these were changes that were done. So I think we're probably just going to take master across the board because the change here was a rename of some converters. So we might just go back and double check this before we push. Okay. So there's the changes there. And I'm going to turn off the soloing so that I can get a view of the wild. So specifically, I want to just double check the changes that were made to those converters, just to make sure I'm clear. It switched. So an inline return versus curly braces. So this one here, I'm not overly. In general, I don't mind inline return statements on C# when the if statement is, we'll say, trivial. And trivial in this case is very subjective. Like there's not a lot. Like I actually, hang on, let me see if I can find it real quick. I sent some colleagues of mine some code from last weekend where I shot myself in the foot with
a very, very bad. Yeah, here it is. One second, let me just extract it so I don't accidentally show wrong stuff, right? So, right. So I spent a great deal of time staring at this code, longer than I'm going to admit, trying to figure out why Visual Studio was convinced I was unreachable. Right? I stared at this for a very long time and I went, why does it think I'm never going to decrement I? The whole point of this was I'm trying to count backwards, right? Because when you do the remove at, this iterating backwards through a list is a nice cheater way of handling it. There's something wrong. Why is Visual Studio telling me this is yeah. For those people who aren't seeing it, here's a hint. That return is very poorly indented. I had done some moving of code around and I hadn't formatted the file, and this return statement was indented, making it look like it was inside the if. This is C#. That's not how it works. This return statement is functionally right here. Yeah. So that was exciting. Don't be an idiot. Don't be like me. So some of these may be a little aggressive on the inlines. Like some of these ones here, this one doesn't bother me, right? Like that's probably perfectly fine. But something like this where it's being built up, I don't know. When if the list pattern match spans multiple lines, I kind of feel like I like keeping the ones here. Again, what is a trivial if condition is highly subjective. Highly subjective. Okay, so that'll fix that. Let's work tree this sucker again. Yeah, yeah. So let's start with this. If we push this, let's just make sure I have force push permissions onto a different fork. Oh, mwah. Okay. I would like to. Well, we're already on it, so let's just jump in. We'll just pop the branch and go, because I think there's a couple of these that I'm just gonna fix. Like on one hand, I could go through and make PR requests, but this sometimes it's just easier to get in and fix it really quick. And this particular contributor has been doing a ton of code cleanup, and so I don't mind. Let's see, oh, see, this is also nice. A better error message. Though I'm not sure why I got an error message the first time and not a second time, so that's exciting. Okay, and I'm sure my big head was in the way, so let's take a look at which of these. That one's fine. That one's fine. I'm really just looking for it. Okay, so floating hint initial horizontal offset. Let's start there. Let's see. This is going to be down here. Let's see. Floating hint initial horizontal offset convert. Yeah, I think this one we're going to put the curly braces back on. It's just when the list pattern match has to span across the lines, I think we're going to just unindent that. Is that, or I think we indent all. That might make it clearer. It's hard to say. Like the list pattern match is new enough that yeah, we'll go with it. Okay. That one's unchanged. Hint margin converter. I'll revert that one. At least clean it up. Yeah, because this one here, it looks like he landed on the same thing. Square braces on their own lines, everything indented. Huzzah. All right, there's nice symmetry there now. That's fine. Floating hint text block margin. Floating hint text blocks margin. We'll just put these ones back. Goes there, that goes there, that goes there. Great. Works out well. Works out great. Okay, so that's fine. That's fine. I will say I do appreciate
people going through and cleaning up code. Like I often do some of this cleanup, but this is one of those areas some people don't like PRs that just do code cleanup like this. I actually kind of enjoy it as long as it's going in the direction of what the rest of the repo is doing. Because sometimes people are like, oh, we'll just do big refactor auto cleanup ones, which is fine, that works. But on an open source project, it actually can be kind of problematic because it breaks a lot of people. Like on a regular project on a dev team, you're usually breaking just the people on your dev team. On an open source project, you're potentially breaking every contributor and slowing them down, which is not great. Math converter test even implemented the converts. And this is totally fine. I'll point one thing out that some people will squawk at is there are some comments on unit tests that unit tests should follow the arrange act assert pattern and should have single assertions, right? So if I go math converter test, this one, right? So some people would argue, well, this isn't quite right. What it actually should be is, if we do the arrange act assert pattern, here's your arrange, here's your act, here's your asserts. Simple, right? The idea of a single assert is like, well, by doing this, you're now testing two different things, right? None double argument should return do nothing, right? So functionally, this thing goes through and says, well, you've got empty string and hang on. Now I want to look at this converter. Oh, I think it does it with the parameter, doesn't it? Yeah. So it's testing the case of here and here, right? That's the symmetry between them. And so the idea is it's like, well, you're technically testing two separate things, and so this feels weird. It's like I don't care that much. As long as the test reads well, I'm fine with it. For people who are overly pedantic, the clear way to do this is make it a data-driven test. Right? So what you end up doing is you end up doing something like object value, object parameter, right? And you do something like this, and then you do inline data, and it becomes there and 1.0, right? And then you come down here, and it becomes, we grab the 1.0, the empty string here, so we do 1.0, empty string here, right? This becomes value parameter, right? And then you don't need, you are now down to a single assert. And I will say, when people advocate for a single assert in a unit test, I usually go, I get that, right? The guideline here is unit tests should test one thing. And so some people take that to the extreme and say that means a single assert. It's like, that's a little too extreme. I agree that tests should test one thing, but one logical assertion. You like if you find yourself needing, conjunctions in your test names, that's probably an indication you've gone off the deep end. But so something like this is a way of doing it, honestly. But my opinion, this is just as readable, right? And the question is, what is the failure case we're actually guarding against here? It's like, this is so small, it's not a big deal. Go for what is it? Behavior-driven design, where possible, push test generation up the chain of command. Am I getting that right? BDD, behavior-driven design. Behavior-driven development. I knew I had gotten it somewhat close. Somewhat close. Yeah, and I think this is the argument for things like Cucumber, business-driven design in my case. Yeah, and honestly, one of the best projects I ever worked on, there was a lead dev that was very pedantic about making sure that every business requirement that came down the pipe,
there must be at least one test for that requirement. And it was kind of annoying, but at the same time, we had very few. Like, if there was an issue, it was with the design, not with the code. And it was really convenient, especially when you get a conflicting requirement later on. You'd go to implement it, and if a test broke, you knew that you had violated a business rule that had come in at some point, and so then you could go back to the PO and go, okay, look, you're asking for this, but we would need to change this other thing that you told us about last year. Is that okay? Yes or no? Right? Like, requirements change, that's fine, but it made for a nice, easy documentation. Okay, so I think that's fine. Just going to push these changes. Converting a few if statements to use curly braces. Doing this when the if statement is not trivial. And spelling is difficult, which is why we use a spell checker. I try to demand requirements be written in a spec flow format. Saves the headache of trying to interpret it. see, the only thing though is if you do that, that's when AI actually has it easy, when the requirements are well defined. That's usually what saves AI from taking my job, is having to figure out what people actually want. Okay, cool. Cool. That gets more stuff rolling. Let's see. Fixing code style issues. Approve and run. We're going to enable auto merge. Confirm auto merge. Got my approve still sitting on it. We just looked at it. Huzzah. Okay, cool. Cool. And now, rather than 75 files, we're now down to 15. Is much cleaner. Much cleaner. And one of our PRs already merged. Wonderful. Okay. Let's switch gears completely. Completely upend gears. And I want to look at some Velopacks. So, because I am behind on this task that I so generously. So I was given actually, hang on. This over here real quick. I don't think there's any. I'm gonna double check it before I put my foot all the way in my mouth. That while it's thinking about what it's done, we're gonna talk through this. Okay, so for people unfamiliar with it, once again, more shameless self-promotion. Velopack is a product I am very heavily involved in. It's still wrong 90% of the time, but keeps the managers busy instead of interrupting me. I now see the motivation, Izzy. Wonderful. So Velopack is a installer that was originally based on Squirrel. So Squirrel's tagline, let's see, which I still think is kind of funny. It's still kind of funny, right? It's like click once, but works. Like that's Squirrel's tagline. That's not wrong. The problem is Squirrel, at least up until recently, had kind of gone by the wayside. There's a ton of open issues. There's been some stuff. Like, it works, right? If it works for you, you're probably fine to use it. Keep scrolling. You're doing great, right? Not a big deal. Velopack came about because there was, I can find it still this way, right? So Cloud Squirrel came from Kalen forking Squirrel and starting to do some cleanup on it. Lots of rewrites, lots of merging, lots of changing. I think at this point he's rewritten the entirety of the core of it, so it's entirely different. But the what we decided to do is take it and create something called Velopack. So Velopack is a framework plus a library for building cross-platform installers. So it works on Windows, Mac, and Linux, and will generate out a nice cross-platform installer. It has a library that can do automatic updates for you. There is support for C Sharp. What is it? C Sharp. Hang on. Before I put my foot all the way in my mouth, we have documentation page. Where is our uh language? We've got a language table somewhere in here that goes. There we go. C Sharp, Rust, JavaScript, C++, with more on the horizon. And the JavaScript stuff is primarily around looking at people like Electron, or be able to go through and do it. But it gives you a simple way, especially if you are building a cross-platform application. Imagine C Sharp. I've been really loving my Avalonia, giving you a way to say, hey, I've built this nice cross-platform desktop app. How do I install it? How do I do updates? How do I not hate myself trying to deal with all of that? So Velopack gives you that. There is a future thing for Velopack that will be coming that we have called Velopack Flow that will give you a cloud hosted solution. So if you don't want to think about, now that I've built my installer, how do I host it in online so that people can do it? There will be a paid hosting solution for people who just don't want to think about it and just have the hosting handled for them. So there's that. If you don't mind hosting the installers, it's free for the framework and library. Have at it. Right? Wonderful. And please, if you've got feedback or things, drop in the Discord. There's lots of good stuff there going through. So, okay. So, given that, so that's where we're going. One of the requests, and this is I think one of the requests for I don't know why it took so long to load. Is there is this issue here, support Wizardy installer on Windows. So the only issue with the Windows-based installers is you get a setup.exe. It's great. The problem is this doesn't give us the the ease of integration that we would want on Windows, because the installer goes very quickly, but oftentimes people have more that they want the installer to do. And so one of the big ones is right now the installer installs on a per user basis. But if you want to install into, say, program files, that requires elevation. Right? Program files is a protected directory on Windows. You can't have just non-admin users installing there. It's often used to protect things, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So for people who want to go down that route, the intent here was to allow Velopack to also produce an MSI. Looking at Wix at the moment as a way of producing that. And as part of producing the MSI, what would be kind of convenient is if we could go through and prompt extra information. So that's kind of where I was thinking of going and looking at this. So I will clarify something. I haven't played with Wix since like Wix 3. Wix is now, so most people are running Wix 4, 5, depending on where you're at. 4, I believe, is considered the stable one, with 5 being new, latest, and greatest. At least that's kind of what I can tell. The big issue with Wix is it's hard. It's really bloody hard. Like, you find conflicting documentations from different versions online. Like, it can produce really nice installers, and I've used it on other projects, but it's not easy. It's really easy to screw it up. I don't like it. I like easy installers. So, but the idea here is we want to be able to go through and have custom markdown pages for things like welcome, readme, license, conclusion, that kind of thing. Should be great. We want to allow picking of where to install the application, right? So app data is our default, program files, user provided directory, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, for people who maybe have different drives or whatever. Um, and then we're gonna go from there. So these top two are kind of the big ones. Most people who are looking for an MSI based thing, it's this top thing here. A few people are really wanting things around like the README/license option as well. Like people have asked for the welcome and conclusion. I don't think that's a blocker for it. I think those are nice to haves for a lot of people, but their big thing is, hey, I can't have people installing my app without accepting a licensing agreement or something, right? Oftentimes the workaround for most people is I'll just do it on the first run of the app. Velopack gives you hooks so that you know if you're a first run app, and then you can do stuff. So oftentimes, just rather than doing it as the installer, you do it on launch. That's the easy way around it, but we're gonna try to offer something here. Obviously, the MSI is Windows only and will not work elsewhere, but this is a Windows option. The other thing that is subtly being implied here is if you're installed into program files, when you do the updates, we're going to have to do some changes to our update process to handle requesting elevation. Because to do the update into program files, you're going to need to be able to have that update feature as well. So, what I have done so far, there is a handful of places online that I was playing around, and I found a lovely repository. This Wix installers one, and we'll just share it out because this is I found this to be rather helpful. Right, it's a few months old, but at least it has. I appreciated the author calling out, hey, I used version 3.14.1 of Wix. Great, that was a good level set of okay. Here's what I expect to find. I'd like to do something slightly newer, but at least this gives me a way to go. The other thing that has changed with Wix is there is a let's see, Wix Visual Studio extension. It's Fire something something something. That comes with this is the Wix 3 one. There's a third party that has produced a new thingy, and Fire Giant, that's the one. Which is nice because now there's corporate support. The Wix tool set is still free. There's a newer extension, all of that stuff for Visual Studio to try to make your authoring much easier, which is really cool, right? All of that's nice. The problem I have is I need to do this in an automated way with Velopack. I'm not looking to just author an installer inside of Visual Studio, which is what a lot of these things would end up giving you. Great, fine, off to the races. But what I have done instead is I have gone through, and I probably should fork this repository so I can play in my own area and actually push stuff back, is I have been playing around with building out, I've got this little build script with doing embedded UIs inside of the Wix installer. So this gives us a nice little option. So you'll note, and this is the area where things start to get a little confusing, and especially things have changed in the Wix version, so I've had to tweak things to be happier. But this is leveraging a WPF UI that gets launched inside of Wix, which I was like, hey, that's pretty cool. There is also this custom action down here, and I'm going to point something out. Target Framework Net 20. This I found to be hysterical. Right? I did not realize that the TFM, so
framework TFMs. So there are a nice table here, right, showing you all your. So people who don't know TFM, Target Framework Moniker, it's a big long word that means version of .NET that I want to target. That's it. It's no more complicated than that. But we come down here and we see that Net Framework actually has Net 11, Net 20, Net 3.5, 4.0, all the way up. So these are all of the .NET Framework versions, right? The one that baffles me a little bit, right, is I kind of wonder what they're going to do, because this hasn't been updated yet for, I guess they've got Net 9 there. I was expecting to see something down here for Net 9 as well, but I guess they haven't. They only added it above. That's fine, right? So they've got Net 9.0. I see a confusion point happening when we get to .NET 11, and we have Net 1.1 and Net, what I assume will be 1.1.0. There's no way that causes any confusion for people. I'm calling it now. In 2 years, that is one of the most common bugs for people doing SDK projects, is they forget the .0 on the end and shoot themselves in the foot. That's my working theory. So yeah, that'll be an interesting thing. So, but due to limitations here, I got to write code targeting Net Framework 2.0. You know how long it's been since I've written code against Net Framework 2.0? But this was all around just trying to figure out how to do custom actions inside of Wix as well. In fact, you know what? Let's take this repository. Let's actually make a fork. And while you do that, I want to go back here. This guy deserves a star. Because Robert deserves a star, because I found these to be rather helpful despite the fact that they were a little different. Let's copy this, and we're going to add a remote. Where's my Kraken? Where is my Kraken? Let's see. I don't want to change this guy to be something like this. Edit remote, right? And then Kraken's already helpfully figured out that I have a fork. Thank you very much. Yes, I would like to add it. But I'd kind of like to rename it. Edit. I want you to be origin. Thank you. Shared settings, lock file removed while in use. I don't know what that means. GitKraken. That's exciting. Okay. So let's see. I added a manifest for .NET Global Tools to be able to pull this in. This guy here, I added the update code despite the fact that, and maybe we should discard this. The first example works except for it throws a warning, but I realize that the warning is this is not upgradable, but the very next one shows you how to add in the upgrade code. So it's like, if you're starting with something, start at 0.1, in my opinion. I personally don't like examples that don't leave you in a happy place. And this doesn't leave you in a happy place. It does have the PowerShell scripts in it, though. And there is a useful README kind of walking through what's going on here and how this plays out. So, like, again, it was useful. So let's, you know what? We're just gonna push this straight into my main. Currently just using Wix with Harvester. Yeah. So, and that's the idea. Is Wix will always be more powerful than Velopack in terms of total features, and I don't think we ever are going to like try to expose all the things or even most of the things, because our target is trying to keep things simple, and the moment you expose a lot of options, it gets complicated, and at a certain point, that's probably just more difficult than it's worth. I am mildly considering whether Velopack will just, like, should it be possible to dump the Wix file via the CLI? That way there's a kind of a grow up story for people who are using it. Maybe, right? Like that's a possibility.
because I want to leave people with an option to be able to do it. And if you use the if you use Wix to build your MSI for your installer, you could still use the Velopack library to do your updates, at least after we're done with these changes. Because the whole idea is the bootstrapper that does the updates is going to be watching for access restrictions and then pop the UAC prompt when you're in like program files or similar, right? That way the updates can continue to work. So I was contemplating should this allow for something like that. It's like, is that useful? If you're dropping into that, you probably don't want our file. You probably want something a little more you, a little less us. I don't know. That so we're gonna just push that up while I have it and get this guy going. Access denied. That is because my remote is still set to the wrong one. That upstream. No, point at that one. Now push. There we go. Okay, great. Now, great. That's all we have. Okay, so here's what we've got, right? And if I take this guy, and it's generally a bad idea to test installers on your main machine. You should do it inside of a sandbox or similar. So we're going to run it straight on my machine. All right. The key thing here, this is a markdown README. You'll note this is popping this thing up. So what's actually happening here? I was quite proud of myself when I got this working. All right. So I've got this binary README MD that's being added in to this. And then as part of the embedded UI, here, remember where I ended up doing this because I ended up stealing some stuff. README text. This guy here. Bum. So inside of the initialize, because part of building an embedded UI with Wix is you have to implement needed interface where you get the session, which gives you access to the interesting stuff. But if I can find a binary entry with the name of README file, I can now pull out that markdown. And in this case, I just read it to a string and shoved it up there. But then we are able to go through and render it. It's like, oh, that's kind of convenient, right? So how we end up doing this is a little different, but this gives us at least a proof of concept. And I think what we can do is we can get or try to get Velopack working with something akin to this. All right. This, I think, is pretty close as a starting point. The other thing that I'm realizing we're going to end up needing is the Velopack tooling is going to need to pass through an update code because I don't know how else it's going to get it. Like you need a consistent update code. Again, unless we let Velopack gen this and load it in or similar, like this is where things it starts to get weird, right? Like we could have Velopack just generate auxiliary Wix files alongside an existing one to put it in. It's like there's all these weird things. But then this is the magical link into the embedded UI stuff. So, with all of that said, jump over to Velopack. See, this thing is here, but let's go ahead and make create work tree. But actually, let's just do a work tree over here. All right, so we're gonna go here. Reference checkout. I really want origin. Origin develop. Yep. And then work tree branch to create. Let's do something that's MSI installer. Yeah. That sounds great. Yeah, go ahead and open. Great. We're gonna open this. Move this over here real quick while I
jump out. Get mildly annoyed that the location is wrong. And launch Velopack here. This is one area where my comments before about uh, one of the problems with work trees is that it will be a clean directory. With Velopack, because there's so much extra stuff that kind of goes into tiling it, like the build pipeline on this is insane. If anybody wants anybody wants to see something incredible, right? Like that's not. Where's the interesting? What? Why am I confused? Oh, build. There's the interesting one. There's the interesting one. I just can't read. Right? The code path through here starts to get real interesting real fast because you'll note there's, in order to compile this for all the platforms to do all the things and then run the tests on all the things, it gets to be real interesting real fast. So points to Kalen. He did a cool job of it. Okay. Stored. Oh, we got more NuGet package vulnerabilities to deal with. Yeah. Shut up. Go away. Go away, Visual Studio. I'll deal with those in a minute. So we do have the new Renovate bot that is keeping things updated. So in a lot of cases, things are just getting revved for us for free. So most of those NuGet ones are only vulnerabilities for a short period of time until Renovate goes through and revs all of them. Okay, so I think we can start down here. We can kind of just work our way through the tooling on this, I think. So VPK is the entry point for our CLI. And in all of these guys here, when you run a specific target OS, right, you get slightly different options. Like the Windows pat command, I think is where we're going to end up actually doing some of this, because this will only end up being Windows specific. Even though pack has all of this interesting stuff on here, I think we're going to end up needing to do this. And I'm trying to just look and see what we already are providing that we may end up, right? Like we're going to end up with, I think in terms of what we need in here, right? Most of it we either already have or can get, because I am going to end up needing product name, which I can get from probably pack ID, possibly title might be a better one here. Manufacturer, I think we're gonna just forward with authors, because that's likely the what you need to. Version we've already got. Language, I think we're gonna leave hard coded. Wix has a lot of localization support that I don't think we're gonna worry about. The upgrade code is something that we're going to need passed to us, because that's not something that we can generate. Like for a V1 we could generate it, but then you need to be using the same upgrade code going forward. So I don't think we want to do it. And so I'm kind of wondering, given that, because like the release notes, right? Like those can all end up in markdown files that we then render. I think we might have most of what we need here. I think. Obviously, we'll need to have program picker and all of that kind of stuff flowing through, but I think we can make this work. I think we can make all of this work. I'm also mildly tempted to write the UI in Avalonia. I'm mildly tempted. Just not sure if it's actually a worthwhile endeavor. Like this is going to be Windows specific. So is there any benefit to it being Avalonia versus? Might be better to be WPF. I refuse to go WinForms. Because I'm gonna have to target that's the other drawback, is I'm gonna have to target ye olde framework. Yeah, because I'm kind of thinking that I take this file here and just string template the sucker and do all of that. So let's do this. Public GUID. My big head is in the way. Pretty close. Here, Copilot. Figure it out. Wix. Dang nabbit. Dang nabbit, Copilot. You're going to show off again, aren't you? Please don't make me look like an idiot. Let's see. So we are only... Yeah, and Izzy, I've got good news in terms of Delta updates. Got good news. We have... Right now, the Delta updates on Velopack, like, they only go from version 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, right? So they're additive. And so if you have somebody who needs to do a bunch of updates, Velopack will look and see if the size of the deltas is bigger than the downloading the update itself and do that. But we have a proof of concept of a really, really slick way of doing deltas. You no longer need delta files that are separate. You get all the benefits of only downloading the changed bits that you care about. And it can go between any two versions, regardless of channel, version, up, down, all of it works. When Kaylin told me that, I was like, that sounds like a pipe dream. And then he proceeded to walk me through it, and I went, okay, I'm impressed. I am very, very... Copilot, you are just a freaking show-off. That required. I don't want it to be required. I intend... Like, options are by definition optional. And I believe we want this nullable. For Wix. I think we're gonna do... Like, you need to know a little bit. I don't know how. I feel like I have to do this with documentation. Yeah, and that's a part. This is part of why I think we're gonna get this working, Izzy, and then I think I'm gonna look into extensibility of it, because it would be really nice if, because Wix you can separate things across multiple files, right, and then it kind of globs everything together. In my mind, what would be really clever is if we just genned the one file, but left it open for extensibility so that people could bring in extra stuff. But I need to look more into what that would actually look like, because I don't really know what that would actually look like. But I think that gives people then a really nice grow up story. Like I said, one of my thoughts is just like, we could dump out this Wix file for somebody and go through and do it. The thing is some of the stuff is going to be conditional based upon the other options you set. But my thought would be that if people wanted that, they could start with that as a Wix thing. But ultimately, you can use Velopack's library for the updates and then roll your own installer. Like, that's a thing. You can't do that today only because the update bootstrapper doesn't handle the permissions problem. Once we fix that, then you can effectively roll your own installer with our bootstrapper for updates, and you're good to go. Assuming the updates are an MSI file. Because at the end of the day, our bootstrapper still has to go out, pull down, do the run, all that stuff. But there's very little fanciness in here. Okay. So if we do that, what I want is then the pack runner. Let's see. Windows Pack options. This is where we need public. Yeah, and that's kind of what I've seen. The Visual Studio extension that they have out strongly kind of guides you into a particular structure for laying out the files. Which is totally fine, right? Like I'm cool with that. But then we have to figure out how do we plug in things properly. Yeah, one or more files for localization, exactly. So I'm looking to get V1 in and working, and then we'll add the extensibility later. That's kind of my thought initially. Is I want to get a basic MSI generating and deal with the bootstrapper and make sure all of that plays nice, and then we'll circle back to make this thing better. Kind of my thinking. That's where my head's at the moment. Okay, so now in the command runner, this is where we end up doing stuff. Right, so we do the click once manifest, blah blah blah, update. Why does this thing do? Resource edit. Feel like some of these things should be asynchronous calls that aren't, but whatever. Clean this up while I'm here. Collection initializer. That's the new hotness. Assume you're going with Wix 4. I might even go 5. But we've already got code in here that can pull down NuGet packages. Because we needed to pull them down for Azure Trusted Signing. But my thought was a global tool is just a NuGet package. And so I may leverage that same code for pulling down that in order to do it. Velopack already has a requirement that to run its tooling, you need .NET. Like that's currently a built-in requirement. At some point, we may look to relax that because for non.NET devs, that's an extra add that they don't normally have. Yeah, well, and the thing is, at present, I haven't done anything that's Wix 5 specific. I don't think. I think the big jump that they did, because I was going through the changes, is from 3 to 4, there was a huge amount of cleanup where they got rid of a lot of because before in Wix 3, which I'd used before, there was a lot of duplicate stuff, right? You had a GUID and you had to make sure you put it in all 3 places correctly or your world ended. And in 4, they kind of realized, okay, let's dial that back and make it easier for people. And then they did more in 5, I think, as I understood the release notes, but I have not dug into it. Yeah, and that's the thing is I think if I want broad support, 4 is the way to go because there is a large amount of stuff there. They just broke it in other ways. Yeah, like Wix is powerful, but it is also it annoys me when I use it. Which is not a feeling you want to have. Let's see. This is all of the stuff, but where's the actual? Oh, was I down a level? Is that what's going on here? Yeah, that's exactly what's going on here. Okay, so executable. Yeah, package builder. This is where I'm trying to figure out the right place to plug this in at. Let's see. Only on Linux, setup tasks. With great power comes a greater chance to shoot yourself in the foot and make a bigger hole while doing it. What are you squawking about here? Variable declaration can be deconstruct. Oh, that's clever. Deconstruct. I like it. If we're going to use a value tuple, we might as well go all the way. Yeah, because this is kind of what I'm thinking, where we write out new spec stuff and that kind of thing. But where is the right place to plug in the getter? That is what I would like to know. Where is the best place to, because these are all overrides. Create startup package. So it's really this guy here that's going to do the running. When he gets invoked, check that the exe exists, concurrent bag, main executable, collapse, execute with progress. Reprocess, code sign application, build portable package, build release, build setup package. I'm thinking this is where I want to do it. No installer. I think it's going to be in this vicinity because if somebody specifies no installer, we probably don't gen the MSI either. So create setup package is probably the magical place we want to do this. This creates a package bundle, pulls all the stuff apart. Because at this point, do we have all the information? We do. I think we do. Got the options. Got our upgrade code. Like, we can check everything we need to. I think this is probably the right place. The progress indicator gives me pause, but let's ignore that for the moment. Find files. So this creates the package bundle. Yeah, that's fine. Find files implementation. How does this end up working? Just checks it. I think we would actually probably want to go in here. Something along the lines of if options dot Wix upgrade code is right. No. Let's see. Wix upgrade code specified reading MSI. Right, so something of that nature. Let's see here. Let's set up exe, change extension, MSI. Okay, Copilot, you want to just write the code for me? Create MSI from setup. See, I don't think that's quite what I want to do here. I appreciate you doing that, but let's look here because let's see. Do you use a package or just an XML scheme to create the Wix types? Or are you handcrafting from scratch? And I previously used XCD code to generate types when I automated the thing in the last place. Oh, I was going real dumb because you are correct. They do have um the scheme out there. I also looked at there's like a Wix.net library that was sitting out there that seemed to be reasonably supported for genning installers with C Sharp. I was thinking of going a little lower to the ground and just uh, uh, genning the XML and then actually using the Wix CLI to build the MSI from that. So having our tooling effectively gen this file and then just use their global tool to create it. Because I think I have all of the stuff. The problem is this isn't quite right because this is the package path. The package path in this case is the NuGet package. I think this is what I want though. I want this guy. If I've got, oh, this is probably a mistake. Wait, isn't zip package disposable? Oh, zip package is ours. Ah, it wraps it. That's why. Okay. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. If this is ours, that means it's got all the files for me. Well, that's exactly what I'd like. That is 100% what I want. Though I kind of would like the... Because I'm going to want the individual files before their package, not after. That's going to be an interesting problem. So we don't actually have the original packages here. Where release path, building release, create release package. So I actually want the pack directory. Because this is what actually has all of the files. Right? Because this creates a subdirectory of libapp, copies the files into it. So this has the sum total of everything that I'm looking to get. So I need to package all of those up. So I actually need the pack directory. I kind of think we might want to do something here. Though I'm also realizing, well, the only reason to not go here is because this guy doesn't have. Well, I guess he does have the pack direct. He does have the pack directory, so I do have access to what I want. It's just not quite in the form I would like it, but I do have it. So, goes runner. Let's see, and options dot. Where is it? Oh, the base class for picking the target OS. Target OS. Think we want to do something like this. So, if target OS not equal to Windows, because we aren't going to allow this anywhere, right? I think we're going to do something like this. You up, bring you down, else something of this nature, I think. Right, and so this is going to. I don't really want it to be setup bundle. I think we probably write our own thing. MSI dollar create MSI, and we know we're going to need the upgrade code, and we know we are going to need the pack directory. That has the code. That has all the stuff. We're probably going to need to pass through options as well. I imagine. I can't see how we wouldn't pass. I guess rather than update code, what we really can just pass is options then. Right? Because that's going to have all of the things that we need. Setup bundle located. Guy here. So we can go here, add. Oh, public static class installer, auto code into a new file. Then we want create MSI. Actually, auto code create method. Didn't move it into another file. Move. Here we go. That gets me pretty close. Actually, does options have the... Honestly, I don't need the pack director if I take the options. Literally has everything on it. Okay, turn you off. Boom. Don't need you, don't need you, don't need you. We are going to need... That's the release package, target setup exe. We are going to need the MSI path, though. That is going to be necessary. Okay. Something like that. Now, inside of here, we need to do a handful of things. So we're going to just get it working first. Static string get contents. Ding, ding, ding. Boom. We're going to start here. Come here. Go. Whoop. And we're going to go paste. Okay. String file contents. There we go. Shut up. We're calling it. Okay, so you are going to need the Windows Pack options because you're going to need to read lots of stuff out of here. So here, and we are going to change this up. I don't think there's any curly braces in here, so we can get away with something fancy doing this. So this becomes, yeah, this is going to go here, and it's going to be options dot pack title, I believe. Going to be options dot oh, cancel. Apparently I left it sitting too long and it timed out. Okay. Let's see. Authors. And this may be interesting because authors is multiple. So that might get to be a weird situation, but options, Wix upgrade code. Do there, do there, do there. I think we end up doing the same thing here, right? Of options pack title is where we go here. Shut up. Options. Okay. Then this becomes where things might get real interesting, because how do we gen these GUIDs, especially for updates? For now, we're just going to do GUID, new GUID. But I think we have to be different than that. And more importantly, I think we need to iterate through each of these. So that we're going to need to change. Component main executable. And then I think we need to bring, so we're going to get rid of the custom UI for the moment. I don't know how we're going to deal with that quite yet. We're going to get rid of the binary readme for the moment. We're just going to get this thing again appropriately, the right files. Let's start with that. That'll be a win in and of itself. So I believe, if I remember correctly, the component, if I just iterate through, Passing install location, right? This is yeah, so I think what we'll end up doing is genning out okay, I don't remember. Wix installer component. Can't remember if a component's supposed to be an individual file or if it's atomic units of installation. I think we put Wix installer, all files go in a single component, because I think in our case, single file per component. Show me your source. There we go. See, this is the problem. Restrict yourself to a single file per component. It's designed to support thousands of components of single installer. Every component must have its own unique GUID. Failure to follow these two basic rules can lead to many problems. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Okay, so this is where it's going to get. And this is where. Sounds good, Izzy. Enjoy work. Where I'm wondering if maybe I want to actually harvest the directory. Because the harvest, I think, makes our life a little bit easier. Let's see. Where is the template, PowerShell, directory, my installation location, guest group. Yeah, this guy here. This guy here. Component file, component file. This is where I think we end up with a jump back, look at the latest docs. Get started, blah blah blah, build projects, blah blah blah. Tool set. This the problem is it has too much. Too much for what I need. Working on it itself. Why I was for better list. Because there is heat harvest directory. Or is it candle harvesting? See, this is there we go. Harvest directory to harvest files. There we go. This is kind of what I'm thinking. This is kind of what I'm thinking. Problem is this assumes a Wix toolset SDK. I'm kind of trying to avoid going down that route if I can help it. But I'm wondering if out it, I would be forced to gen it myself. Because it knows how to pull these things across. Harvested. At the end of the day, it really is just something akin to this. Oh. You can GUID star? What? I am clearly out of my element here. Component. This. Then component group. So I think what we want to do is I think we just want to rip through this thing and gen it up. I think that's how we want to do this. Ignoring where this has to go, if we can assume that the working directory is inside the pack directory, then just grab options there. So let's do something like private static I enumerable file info pack files. I think the other bit of code that we were looking at that rips through here, this package, it literally just grabs everything from the package directory, copies it in. I don't know that there's any limiting factors here. Yeah, I think this is exactly what we want. We also probably want to check not just uh so we want to make sure that we're targeting Windows and that we are running on Windows. I don't think we can do this cross-plat any other way. Might check. We might be able to gen outside of Windows. Might not have to be on Windows as we're targeting it. Okay. Copy files internal. Projects exclude. See, this is what I was wondering is there an exclude? A bit. Okay, so package builder. Keeping because match exclude pattern, blah, 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 blah. Kind of want to expose some of this logic so that I can leverage it. This enumerates files, calls this copy files internal. You do. I don't want to have something that does. This is source. It's just coming in here. This should actually probably be enumerate files. Which is slightly faster than get files because get files has to create up an array. It should make a big difference overall because at the end of the day we have to get through them all. But it allows the enumerator to start running quickly. Exclude annoyances. Love the variable name. You're a parameter. The other one, include annoyance is false. So it's coming in. It's coming in with false on the other one. So we can probably just rip through the directory then, because there's nothing fancy about any of this. Literally is just that. So let's start there. So if we come up here, we are going to need a directory info back directory. This thing's called source, but that's fine. And I believe that there works. Enumerate files returns the file info back to you. Type. So if we get back this, that means on our component side, because we could do static string get component file info. I kind of want to strip the name a little bit so that it doesn't, like, file full name isn't going to be what we actually want, because that includes the directory on there. Name is actually closer to what we need, but we kind of want to get relative path. There could be multiple files. Hey, no problem. So that is a great question. So what we are currently working on at the moment is this issue here for a library called Velopack. The idea is we would like to generate an MSI installer as an option for people who use Velopack to install their applications. So Velopack is a cross-platform installer tool set and updater library, all kind of packaged into one. That way you can have easy updates. I'm doing stuff in C#, but it supports C#, C++, Rust, JavaScript. I believe at the moment, with more on the way. And so as part of this, it is designed to be quick and easy and fast, but there are cases where, because it currently installs in local app data, it installs per user rather than once for the whole application. So part of the motivation here is to allow an optional installer to generate an MSI as well. That way, if people want to install into, say, program files and do it once per machine, or use an MSI as part of some automation or group policy or whatnot, there's an easy one to wrap up. So that's the intent. Is we're just trying to get a very simplistic MSI generated from a Velopack pack directory. The Velopack pack directory is functionally the output directory from running something like .NET. Generally, that's what you're going to point it at. You publish your app into whatever directory makes sense for your application. So in C#, the .NET publish gives you your nice release build with whether you're going to do trimming, whether you're going to bring in the framework alongside of it, or whether you're going to assume that it's installed ahead of time, all that kind of jazz. So those are all options available to you. Velopack does also support installing the .NET framework if your app needs it. That is an option available to you. So when you're considering your packaging, just keep that in mind. I am also realizing my indentation here is crap. And that should look a little more. Actually, I think that's correct. That's the one that's wrong. I think that is how it's supposed to be indented. That's what we're going. Okay. So, but what I need to do here is gen this sucker up.